guys, welcome back to Binge Watch Britney. In today's episode, we are going to be covering The Vampire Diaries Season 7. So it's actually been a really long time since I watched this season, and I'm just now really getting around to putting this episode together and actually recapping the season. So what we had happened at the end of Season 6 as just a refresher, Elena was put to sleep at the end of the season, and this was because the actress Nina Dobrev, if I'm saying her last name correctly, left the show, and so obviously they need to figure out how to continue the series for the next 2 seasons. And so what we have happening in Season 7 is we have a back and forth between the present and things that are happening kind of in the future. I don't know the best way to say that, but we have 2 different time periods being told at the same time. And so what you have happening is more of like a flash forward instead of a flash back to kind of tell you what has already happened and then what is about to happen, if that makes sense. So really good way to say that, but I just want to make that clear. So with all of that being said, let's go ahead and get into the rest of the episode. So for our 5 key points, key point number 1. So at this point, the town has been taken over by the heretics. So we have Caroline, Stephanie, and Matt. They're able to evacuate all of the innocent people and get them out of the town. And what happened was a border ended up being established. And this is basically saying that the vampires need to stay out of Mystic Falls. If they cross the border, they are fair game, they can be attacked, and so on. And so all of the people who have been turned into vampires and who grew up in Mystic Falls, they're no longer welcome there, so they have to basically find somewhere else to live and continue their lives. And so Matt is really angry by this. We see him becoming a cop, I think, at the end of Season 6, and he's really wanting to become what Liz was to Mystic Falls, and he's really angry about the town being taken over. He's really angry about the fact that vampires exist, and he has lost so much because of the vampires. And we learned that his girlfriend Penny was killed, and he's even more angry with the vampires because of this situation. And he is specifically mad at Stefan for everything that has happened as far as the things that have gone wrong in his life since Stefan showed up. We also have Damon dealing with life without Elena, and he is traveling the world kind of with Bonnie at this point, and he's really we see him making these decisions where he's like, okay, do I let something happen to Bonnie and then Elena gets to come back? And so there's this moment where Bonnie is almost hit by a car. He saves her at the last minute, but they are both aware that he kind of hesitated in saving her, and so obviously they are deepening their bond, especially after everything they went through in Season 6 with the prison world, but they are really having to get over this bump of Elena or Bonnie and him having to constantly make that choice between the 2 women. We also know that Rick still has the Phoenix Stone, and he's basically trying to figure out how to bring Joe back, and we know that the Phoenix Stone was taken from a museum. Lily is originally after the Phoenix Stone because she wants to bring back her old lover, Julian. And we know that Rick is really struggling with the Phoenix Stone because he wants to bring Joe back. But Bonnie is constantly warning him that he needs to stop using it because she is getting horrible visions from it, and she's been warned not to use the Phoenix Stone. But Rick is continuing to investigate and look into it behind her back, basically. We also know that at some point Caroline is tortured by the heretic girls, and this is in revenge for something that Damon and Bonnie did. So they were able to go back to Mystic Falls. They ended up killing a heretic. I can't recall which one they killed, but Lily and her crew, they find out about this, and they take Caroline as revenge. And so with the other vampires being forced out of Mystic Falls, they have made Matt the owner of the Salvatore Mansion, and so when Damon and Stefan try to go and rescue Caroline, they can't get into the house because Matt needs to give them permission and he won't. And so what they have to do is they end up stopping Matt's heart so that he's temporarily no longer the owner and they can come in. And so what we have happening is Caroline is taken captive, she's being tortured, and her and Valerie have a chance to bond, and she ends up learning about Valerie's story and her connection to Lily and Stephanie a little bit more than she knew prior to that conversation. So what we find out is that Lily sent Valerie to watch over Stefan, and Valerie ended up falling in love with him and they became pregnant, but as Valerie is making the decision to leave the Heretic and be with Stefan, Julian beat her and caused her to lose the baby, and she was never able to reconnect with Stefan. And Lily did not know that this happened, and so this is something that Valerie has been keeping a secret, and this is a huge reason why she hates Julian. Then we have Damon learning that the Heretics have Elena's coffin, and he is really obsessed with trying to get her back, rightfully so. And what they end up doing is going to Oscar, who was part of the Heretic group initially, and then he left them for whatever reason. He didn't want to be involved, and they approach him about the Phoenix Stone, and he's scared of it. He's trying to escape them. He doesn't want anything to do with what they have going on. And so what this leads to is Valerie ends up killing Oscar, and this is problematic because Damon and Stefan, they were planning to take Oscar and then give him back to Lily in exchange for Caroline, but we have Valerie killing Oscar because Oscar knows where Julian's body is located, and she doesn't want that information getting back to Lily. So Valerie ruins the plan for the hostage exchange between Oscar and Caroline. We also learn that around this time, Rick is using the Phoenix Stone to bring Jo back. He is able to get her back, but then we have some weird stuff happening. She's behaving weirdly, she's getting sick, and something is not quite right. And so Valerie is able to tell the group that basically it doesn't bring back the person who was killed, it just puts another soul into their body. Specifically, it puts a vampire into a human body, and that human body can't sustain that vampire soul, so they're going to get sick, they're going to die. And so Rick is really having to deal with the fact that this is not Jo, this is some random person, and he's having to help that person kind of transition to death, basically. And we also have a moment where they try to revive Oscar using the Phoenix Stone. They find out that it's not really Oscar, and they're just really having to deal with that situation. We also have Valerie able to figure out something else that's going on. So we know at the end of season 6 that Kai basically killed Jo and her unborn children. Valerie is able to figure out that the twins were just transferred to another body, and they are actually in Caroline's body. So Caroline is pregnant, and she is the one who is going to birth Rick and Jo's children. We also learn that Damon finds out through Valerie that it was Lily who came up with the spell to put on Elena and Bonnie, saying that one person needs to be awake while the other is sleeping. They can't be alive at the same time. So this is something that is truly devastating to Damon, because he's repeatedly losing his mother over and over again because she's choosing the Heretics over her own sons, Damon and Stefan, and then also she's responsible for this decision that is keeping Damon separated from Elena. So then what we have happening is at some point we really learn that Enjo has a connection with Lily. She made him a heretic, she saved him, and he's kind of in love with her, and so he is really trying to get on her good side, kind of trying to get her to fall in love with him, that sort of thing, but she's really committed to finding Julian and bringing him back. And so Enjo forces Lily to choose between him and Julian, and she chooses Julian, and so she is committed to using the Phoenix Stone to bring him back. We also have Lily kind of having this conversation with Damon and Stefan, and what we learn is that she was in an abusive relationship with their father. She was trying to run away, but she was caught, and as a result the father sent her away, and the kids just thought that she abandoned them, but that was not the case. She was planning to run away with them to get away from their father. We also have Damon and Stefan also having kind of like this huge moment of getting the truth out there to their mother so that she can really understand what she's dealing with when it comes to Julian, because she is able to bring him back. They do reunite their heretic family, and Julian is very controlling and set in his ways and how he wants things done, and obviously he's not going to accept Damien and Stefan unless they kind of like bow down to him. So there's this friction between the men in Lily's life, and so what happens is they're really trying to get through to Lily that Julian is not a good person, and they finally tell Lily the truth about what happened to Valerie and Julian's role in it, that he caused Valerie to lose Stefan's child. And then we also have that situation where Stefan realizes what happened to Valerie, that they would have had a child, that she was abused and all of that stuff, and so they are able to kind of have that closure that they never had before, because once Valerie comes back into the picture, I think Stefan recognizes her, but he feels betrayed by her because she just was there one moment and then she wasn't the next, and he didn't really know what happened to her. So while all of this is going on, Lily is finally choosing her kids over Julian, and what had happened is Julian knew that everyone was basically going to try and take him out, so he linked his life to Lily, and this was his way of protecting himself, and Lily is aware of this bond because she obviously agreed to it, and so there's this moment where she's having to choose between one of the heretics and her kids, I think, but instead she ends up staking herself, and she does this thinking that this is going to cause Julian to die as well. But by that point, this linking spell had been undone, so they were no longer linked. So this just causes Lily to die, and she rightfully sacrificed herself, but it was in vain because it didn't take Julian down as well. This causes the heretics to be divided because obviously at this point Julian and Lily are kind of separating the group and people are forced to pick sides. And so we do have Nora and Mary Louise, a lesbian couple. They are dating and they each choose different people, and so this tension causes them to break up, and I think Mary Louise is not really happy about this because Nora is kind of going off and exploring different things, and she is really kind of obsessive over Nora, and so she's not happy that Nora is moving on. And we even see Nora starting to flirt with Bonnie, but Bonnie is only using her to kind of keep her distracted from what they have going on in the background as far as really trying to force the heretics out of Mystic Falls. Then what we have happening is the heretics receive an X in the mail. So this goes specifically to Nora, I believe. And what we learn is that this is not a good sign. This is an omen. They are all terrified and freaked out by what they have gotten in the mail. And so what we learn is that there's this huntress. Her name is Raina. And she is basically this person from like several 100,000 years ago, and she has been tasked with taking down vampires, and what she does is she stabs them with this special sword, and it puts their soul in the Phoenix Stone, and this is how we understand that when you are marked by Raina's sword, your soul goes into the Phoenix Stone, and you're in hell, and you're trapped, and this is not a good place to be. So it's really bad to be marked by Raina. So once they know that they need to be on the lookout for Raina, they are trying to hunt her down and find her and kill her. And so Bonnie, Nora, and Mary Louise, they find Raina as an old person in the psych hospital. They don't think that she's a threat, so they actually were planning to just leave her alone because she was old, she's frail, she's not a threat to them. But I think Enzo ends up killing her, but this just kind of this makes Raina young again, so she's fit, she's able to run and go after them and all of this stuff, so she is now a legitimate threat to them again. Moving on to the second key point, Damon and Stefan have been marked. So Julian, Damon, and Stefan, they are fighting over everything at this point, especially after everything that happened to Lily. She sacrificed herself. Julian is upset about this, and Damon and Stefan are upset about this because Julian is still kind of in power. And so what ends up happening is the three of them get in a fight, and Damon ends up being staked, and he is stuck in hell, and he's reliving his Civil War days, and basically he keeps trying to save the same people over and over again, but he keeps failing. And so what brought this about was that he was gone for the war. He gets a letter from Stefan saying, hey, you have to come home, whatever. But in order to go home, he has to arrest Union sympathizers, and he actually wants to try and save them. And every time he tries to save them, something goes wrong, someone dies. And so he's just stuck in this loop of constantly trying to do the right thing, but it never goes well. And so we know that this is happening to Damon because he is feeling guilt over not saying goodbye to his mom when she died, and the reason why he didn't do it is because he was really upset over her role in Elena being asleep for the next 60 years or whatever, and so until Bonnie dies, and so he's really upset. He doesn't say goodbye to her, and when he is reliving his Civil War days, he sees kind of his mom and Stefan and other people, I think, coming into that vision with him or whatever, and he's realizing that it's not really real. He's just stuck in a dream, and it's forcing him to deal with the fact that he missed his mom. He was upset with her, but he should have said bye to her, and so he is able to get out of this once he makes that peace with his mother, but his mother dies in his arms. He goes back to the real world, to real life, and because in his vision he thought he had made it back to real life, when he did make it back to real life for real, he thought it was still a vision, and so he attacked everyone, and then he realized, oh wait, this is real life, what did I do? But I think he just kind of like beat them up, he didn't kill anybody. And so while that is happening, we also have Stefan getting staked at some point as well, but he has this vision where basically I think he's drowning, and he keeps trying to save Damon as well, but in order to save himself, he has to let go of Damon, and so this is something that is devastating for him because he's always been concerned and protective over his big brother, and the fact that he had to abandon him in order to save himself is really devastating. We also have Damon once he is back in the real world. He is haunted by someone who is in the vision with him. This is another soldier named Henry. And so Henry followed him back into the real world, and he's just taunting him and tricking him. And he ends up making Damon burn Elena's body. And this is bad because this is not something that Damon wanted to do. And so he's really freaked out about this. He's really upset with himself for doing this. And he is torturing himself by joining some fight club that Julian had, and so he's just letting himself get beat up. Stefan has to go and save him and stop him from hurting himself, but then this forces Damon to tell Stefan why he is doing all of this, and it's because he thinks he killed Elena. And so this upsets Stefan, and then he himself just wants to kill Julian as well. And this ends up with him being able to stake Julian, and he's able to do this with the help from Valerie. So now I want to go back to something that I mentioned earlier, which is that Valerie discovers that Caroline is carrying the twins that Rick and Joe were having, and so she's really struggling with her pregnancy. The twins are feeding off of her, and this is not good, and she's in danger because this is basically her desiccating from the inside out. And so we do have her going to the hospital. I guess she's about to give birth. And so all of the heretics, they kind of have made up with like the regular vampires. And so they are helping her in the hospital, but this also draws Raina to them. And so Bo is one of the people who have been marked by Raina from their previous interactions with her, and so he needs to get out of there. He ends up being killed, and then Raina is just after whatever vampire she can find, basically. And so this leads to Damon going to fight Raina, but he is basically kind of getting bested and defeated by her. And at the last second, he kind of like just gives up and lets Raina kind of like attack him. But Stefan comes in and saves him. And this leads to Stefan being marked. And so Stefan now has to go on the run from Raina because she wants to kill him, and she's going to repeatedly try to kill him. And so Stefan has to go on the run, and he ends up going on the run with Valerie. And so we have at this point, Damon has had a bunch of different situations happening, and he really feels like he is letting down his friend and family because they're always having to sacrifice themselves because of something that he did or something that he wants, and so he feels like he's the bad guy. And so he thinks that it's best for him to desiccate himself and go to sleep with Elena, so that way he's not in the way, he's not a danger to everyone, and he doesn't plan to say bye to Bonnie. And this is really problematic because him and Bonnie have been developing a really great relationship since season 6, and obviously everyone is aware that he's constantly having to choose between Elena and Bonnie, and so Bonnie is really hurt by the fact that he won't even say bye to her and that he's even planning to make this decision at all. And so she actually goes to where he plans to desiccate himself in the coffin. She basically lets him have it and walks away, and then he still desiccates himself. And so moving on to key point number 3. So the Huntress is after the vampires. So this is where we're really seeing the time switch from the past to the present. And so we know that at this point, at the beginning of the series, we see that Stefan's scar has opened up. We don't really know why this is problematic. And then we get the story of what I just explained about Raina marking people with a very special sword. And once they're marked, they have to be on the run from her. And so with Caroline, she's obviously settled down with Alaric. They got married, and with Caroline being attacked, we don't really know what's happening. We just know that she's attacked, and this is obviously an effort by Raina to lure Stefan to her because of the connection that Caroline and Stefan had with them dating and with them just really being each other's person. And so at this point, Damon has been in the coffin for 3 years. He is woken up by Stefan, told that Stefan's scar is reopening and that they basically need to help take down the person who is after him. And so we see them in a high stakes situation of them trying to get away from Raina. And so what we learn is that with Caroline being attacked, we learn that there's different attempts to kind of rescue Caroline and kind of figure out who is behind everything. And we realize that Matt actually helped Raina with her plan, and this is happening because he's really upset with Stefan about what happened to his fiancée Penny, and he believes that Stefan is the reason why Penny is dead. And so what we learn about Stephanie and Valerie is that they were traveling and they were on the run for 3 years. And at one point he went to Klaus to kind of help him because Klaus has a bar where basically Raina cannot track him. And so he goes there. Klaus is actually really mad that he went there, and he basically kicks him out. He leaves his phone, and Caroline ends up calling Stefan. And so Klaus and Caroline get to speak. He learns about the kids and all of this stuff because obviously we know that Klaus is really in love with Caroline. He wanted to be with her, and he knows how important Stefan is to her. And so he is willing to help keep Stefan safe. And then we do have Caroline at some point making her way with the twins to that same bar that Stefan met Klaus at, and she's trying to find Klaus, but he's not around, and I'm not really sure why. And so I think at this point we get a crossover episode with The Originals, which is a new TV show just about the original vampire family. We also have Enzo discovering that he is siblings with the people who are running the army. There's one person in specific who is in charge, and her name is Alexandria or Alex, and he is working with these people because he wants to learn more about his family. But then Valerie is able to tell us that there's basically something shady about the army and what they're doing. And so what we learn is that Mary Louise, I believe, was given pills that are making her sick, and she was captured by the army people, and so basically she's in a really bad situation. Obviously Nora is by her side, and what we learn is that Enzo was actually giving these same pills to Bonnie, and he was doing that to help her stay hidden because the army people are after Bonnie. And what we learn is that Bonnie has been in some kind of recovery center for about 3 years, and we see that she's intent on speaking with a girl named Virginia. We also, moving on, have Raina at some point trying to kill Stefan. We have Stefan obviously being on the run from her, and they come up with this plan to basically transfer Stefan's scar to Damon. He agrees to do it, but then he backs out at the last minute, and then they study again, but it's too late, and Stefan was killed, and his soul is in the Phoenix Stone. And this leads to a fallout between Damon and Valerie because they know that Damon waited too long and basically lost his chance to save Stefan. We also have Raina after Nora and Mary Louise again, and they're able to get away from her, but Raina is following them, and she ends up throwing her sword at them stupidly, and it gets stuck in their car. They have magic, and so they're able to do a spell, and they basically blow themselves up. They sacrifice themselves, and they also take down the sword with them, and so this basically renders Raina unable to do what her task is, which is to kill vampires with that specific sword. And so this leads us into point 4. All of the dead vampires are freed from the Phoenix Stone. Stefan ends up being put into the wrong body. He's in the body of an alcoholic who basically is alcoholic. He's drunk, and he has just crashed a bus full of kids, and so he is basically about to be in legal trouble because of what he has done. And so what happens now is the crew basically has to find Stefan before he dies because he is in the wrong body. He is in a body that is not meant to house a vampire soul. And so Stefan, as this guy named Marty, he is stuck in a blizzard. He's on the run. He's trying to find shelter, and he's also in detox, and so his body is just really breaking down from the fact that he is an alcoholic. He doesn't have access to alcohol, and then he's also dealing with a vampire soul being in his body, and so so he's in a really, really bad place. And so the gang has to work together to find out where Stefan's soul is and where Stefan's body is. And so Stefan's body is being hijacked by this vampire who basically went on a murder spree and was targeting sororities. And so they have to get him to basically go along with their plan to basically swap Stefan into his real body, and that guy is not playing along. And so this is just a really chaotic and bad situation. So what ends up happening is that Stefan, I think, finds a way to get in touch with them, but he can't tell them where he is. And so Damon has to go and find him before he dies. And we see that Stefan is kind of going back and kind of having these memories of him and Damon being together, and he has always believed that Damon would do the right thing, that Damon would save him, and so he is basically down to his last little bit of energy. Damon is nowhere to be found, and so he really basically gives up on Damon at this point. And so what we see while this is happening is that Damon is actually doing everything that he can to find Stefan. They are able to find out where exactly he is. Damon's able to go into like a hospital or a police station and kind of find out even more information. He's able to go straight to Stefan, and he finds him kind of like at the last minute, but he's able to kind of save him, get him in a warm car, give him food, and kind of really conserve and give him energy again so that he can hang on until they're able to do what they can to save him. We also have the gang needing to kill all of the free vampires in order to save Bonnie. So Raina, at this point, she was captured by Damon, and he was basically able to figure out that she has a bunch of lives, and if he keeps killing her, he will basically get down to her last life, kill her for the final time, and then she's no longer a threat to them. But what they realize is that once all of her lives are out and she dies, everyone who has been marked by her is going to die as well, so they can't kill her. And so what happens is she's willing to trade her last life to Bonnie, who is sick because of the pills, but what happens is she wants them to help her kill all of the people that she's supposed to kill. And so there's over 100 names on the list of people that she needs to kill, and so at first it's just like a few people who are helping with this, and then they realize that they need more people because there's just so many names. And what happens is that they are able to partner up with the army people in order to save Bonnie, so that they have more manpower. We do see this moment where Bonnie and Damon are reunited after he has desiccated himself, and so he goes to see her at that recovery center that she's at, and she sees him. She is revealed to be in a relationship with Enzo at this point, and she sees Damon. He has flowers. She's just not happy to see him, and she just closes the door in his face. And so we know that Bonnie and Damon have a lot to do in order to kind of really repair their relationship and get it back to where it was before he decided to desiccate himself. And so once they have killed all of the people, Raina has basically agreed to give her last life to Bonnie, and what happens is that they realize that the armory people are after Bonnie because they need her to basically open this vault that is in the armory. And what we learn is that Alexandria had a sister who went into that vault and basically has never been seen since. And so they want to get into that vault to get their sister out. And so Virginia, who is in the recovery center with Bonnie, she's kind of suspicious of what Bonnie is doing, and she realizes that they want Bonnie to open the vault because she's a Bennett witch. And so she warns Bonnie that she can't let whatever is in the vault out. And so Bonnie makes this promise to her, and basically what we learn is that there's a weird spirit that is in the vault, and it affects whoever is in the vault, and it kind of traps them in there. And so that spirit that is in the vault can't be let out. And so I want to transition to one last thing to mention under this fourth key point is that we have Matt out for revenge, and what ends up happening or being revealed is that Penny was a cop as well. She had arrested Matt at some point, found out about the wooden stakes that he had in his car, realized that there were vampires around, and so they were kind of working together to get rid of the vampires. They were also engaged, and at some point Stefan had come back for, I think, Sheriff Liz is like funeral or kind of like her anniversary of her death, something like that. And they were after Stefan, and Matt ended up trying to shoot at Stefan, but he shot Penny, and so he was the reason that Penny was killed. He was the one who killed Penny, and so Stefan basically erased his memory so that he wouldn't remember that, Matt was able to still kind of subconsciously blame Stefan for that, and then once he realizes the truth, he doesn't kind of ease up on the hatred that he has for Stefan. He's still very angry at Stefan, like he blamed him regardless of who actually pulled the trigger. And so going into my fifth key point, so Bonnie becomes a vampire hunter, and basically what everyone realizes is that Raina tricked them when she said that she would give her last life to Bonnie. No one really realized that Bonnie would actually be inheriting Raina's task of killing vampires. And so what we have happening is that Bonnie becomes a vampire huntress, which is problematic because all of her friends are vampires, and so once she realizes that this is happening, somehow she's able to put herself to sleep and she refuses to wake up, because once she does wake up, she is going to attack everyone. And so the vampires are able to get into Bonnie's head. They're trying to convince her to wake up, and she just keeps killing them and marking them, and they're just unsuccessful. And so Damon's able to come in, he's able to get into her head, and he's basically taunting Bonnie, saying, hey, stay asleep, because if you're asleep, I'll get Elena back. And so this angers Bonnie because she's already feeling abandoned and betrayed by Damon, and she wakes up and she ends up going after him, and she will not stop. She really wants to hurt Damon for everything that he has done to her and all of the bad blood that they have between them. And so what they realize is that in order to break the link between Bonnie and this task that Raina had given her when she transferred her last life to her, they need to get back into the armory, and they need to get the last everlasting body. So I'm going to backtrack a little bit. Once they were able to get into the vault earlier in the season, Bonnie did some type of spell where it locked what was in the vault in the armory so that it couldn't get out. So she kept her promise to Virginia. But now they need to get back into the army. They need to get that last everlasting body, and that everlasting body basically represents all of the extra lives that Raina had. And so there is a body in there that they need to do something with, and that will basically end the link between Bonnie and the task that she had of killing vampires, of being the huntress. And so what happens is that Bonnie is trying to go after Damon. She has to be subdued. She has to be injected with something. She is supposed to be out for like 8 hours, but then she wakes up, she attacks Matt, and then she's trying to go back after Damon. So what they have happening is that they realized, okay, we need to get into the armory. They can't figure out how to get into the army, and so this is where Caroline and Rick's twins come into play, because they know how to do magic, and they are siphoners, I think, so they basically absorb magic, and so they need to absorb Bonnie's magic that is keeping the armory locked. And so what happens is that they are able to then get into the armory. They need to get into the vault specifically to get that everlasting body. They get to it, and what we have happening is Damon and Stefan are basically trying to figure out who is going to go into the vault to get the body that they need, and it ends up being Damon. He's like, basically, it needs to be me. You have done so much for me, blah, blah, blah. And so Damon goes into the vault. He gets the everlasting body. They are able to sever the link between Bonnie and the skill that Raina gave her of being the hunter. And this actually stops Bonnie from attacking Enzo, because Enzo had basically lured Bonnie away from Damon so that Damon and Stefan could do what they needed to do at the armory in order to break the link between Bonnie and the huntress skills that she had. And so they're able to break the link, but what happens is Damon is in the vault, and I think he's on the phone with Bonnie, and he's about to leave, and he hears someone calling to him, and he hears Elena calling to him. And at this point, everyone knows that it's a trick. He's not really hearing Elena, but they can't convince him that it's not Elena, and to continue walking out and to get out of the building so that he's safe. And so he ends up going back into the building. And for whatever reason, Damon and Enzo are really good friends, and I can't recall exactly what leads Enzo to go into the vault after Damon, but he goes in, and basically both of them disappear. Nobody's able to find them, and that is where the season ends. Alrighty, so to wrap up this podcast episode on season 7, This was kind of my favorite last season just because it was somewhat true to everything with the vampires, but it was still kind of introducing new things into the storyline. This was also the first season without Elena really being a main or central figure in the storyline, so I think for the most part they did a really good job of like keeping everything going. But I will be honest, season 8 was not my favorite season. I did not really like the Sybil and Cage storyline, and so I really wish that they could have just stuck to keeping everything about vampires instead of introducing new creatures. But I will be doing a recap on season 8 just to wrap up everything about the Vampire Diaries. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.